our Junior Achievement of Central Florida prep session for volunteers. My name is Katie Brown, and I'm the Vice President of Education here in Orlando for our Central Florida office. We are so happy to have you here volunteering with us in our schools, and this presentation is hopefully going to help you feel a little bit more prepared for your volunteer experience. So the purpose of today's session is to connect you with Junior Achievement, to thank you for your time that you're giving us in being part of this organization, and to help you feel prepared for your time with students. The purpose of this is not to go over specific program information. So if you're working with a group of second graders, we're not going to be going over the second grade curriculum. Or if you're working with high school students, we're not going to be going over the personal finance curriculum. That information will show you where to find. Those are found in our volunteer guides, but today's video is simply to make you aware of what it's like to work with students in the classroom and to teach you some things that you need to be involved in when you're in a classroom with students. So at Junior Achievement, we have 4 steps to preparing for a volunteer journey. We call that our prep cycle. We are starting right now with the prepare to be awesome phase, and then I'll show you what the rest of those steps are as we go through our presentation. Prepare to be Awesome is a document that you will receive as part of your preparation guides and materials from our office. I strongly encourage you to spend some time going through that document, making sure that you're familiar with the elements of it. Topics that will be included in that document are what your role is in the classroom. How to give instructions to students, also some instructions for you on how to be an instructor in the classroom. There are topics in there on how to facilitate discussions with students of all ages, and then diversity within the classroom itself. We are also going to be talking through all 4 of those principles today in this video. So the R in our prep cycle stands for reviewing your JA session guide. Your session guide or your volunteer guide is like your lesson plans. It's what you will actually be teaching. Those guides come with a script in them. The script is optional for you to use. It's just simply to guide, like it says, to guide you through the lessons. If you are comfortable ad-libbing and sort of going off script, go for it. We like these lessons to be personalized. But if you feel more comfortable when you have something in your hands that you can kind of read from and guide you more directly through, do that as well. So these guides are for you to use as you see fit and as you are comfortable with. Just know that the materials and the objectives within them, we want to make sure are what are conveyed to the students. Now, whether that's through the script or whether that's through your own discussion format, that's fine, but just make sure that you're sticking to the objectives of each lesson. Each of your lessons and activities include several of these or all of these elements that are listed here. There's an overview at the beginning. There are lesson objectives, which are what we use to sort of make sure it's like the topics of what you're teaching that day. So you'll want to make sure that you have gone over those objectives before you go. Preparation, it will show you what to be prepped ahead of time. For some in the lower grades, there are some manipulatives or some actual documents and activities that will need to be prepared ahead of time. So you'll want to make sure you know that before you walk into a classroom. Each segment of the lesson will give you a recommended time to help you keep track of your time while you're working with the students. And then there's also the step-by-step instructions, which is the scripting that we talked about. So all of our lessons have 3 components to them when you're working with students. There's an introduction for students so that they understand what it is they're going to be learning from you today. There's an activity, sometimes multiple activities that go along with the lesson. And then there's the summary and review where you come back together at the end and just sort of summarize the things that you've learned that day together. In the activity section, if you have multiple activities, Some of them will say required and some of them may say optional. Those tend to be for our longer lessons. And if there are optional lessons in there, just know that you'll need to teach the required activities first. And then if you have time left, you can work on the optional activities. But we want to make sure you have more time fillers than less. So we have both of those listed in some programs. Engage students in doing most of the thinking, reading, and talking during the activity section. So if you'll notice, the introduction, if you look at the little chart here, is a little smaller, and so is the summary. Those are your sections where you really lead a lot. But we have the majority of our time, the students are the ones that we want doing the thinking and the reading and the talking and engaging, because that's how they process learning. So make sure that you aren't the one doing most of the talking in the classroom, especially during that activity segment. Ways that you can get kids talking is to ask them to turn and talk to each other. Sometimes they're more comfortable talking to each other than they are talking to an adult, a new adult in the room. We particularly find this in the older grades. So if you're working with middle and high school students, having them turn and talk to each other sometimes will get more they get more comfortable with you being in the room if they can talk to a peer instead. So that's one way you can sort of get them to engage if they're not engaging themselves. The E in our prep process is our educator connection. You will not have communication with the educator until the morning of your programming. And so before you start programming, we suggest you arrive a little bit before students do, so that you can ask teachers some of these questions. You'll want to ask teachers how they distribute materials and what is their process like for student participation, particularly in the younger grades, which would be K to sometimes 7th or 8th grade. Teachers might have processes that they use to call on students in class. I usually suggest that our volunteers not call on students directly, simply because all of our classes are blended learners, which means you have students of all learning levels in there. And so you want to make sure that you're not calling on students who are unable to answer the question or who might be put on the spot to answer the question. So usually what I do when I'm in the classroom is, if I need a student volunteer or I need a student to participate somehow, I ask the teacher, Miss Smith, could you pick a student in the room that can answer this question for me? And that way the teacher will know who would like being called on and who would not like to be called on. And that usually gets you a better success rate with student participation. You might also ask teachers what are the rules or expectations that you need to follow in the classroom. So how do they handle going to the bathroom? How do they handle eating food in class? Things like that. Those are things that they might have classroom rules or culture around, and you'll just want to make sure that you're aware of those. The last two questions deal with diversity and equality in the classroom. We want to make sure that we know how to be inclusive of all students in the classroom, all learning levels, all types of students, all diverse backgrounds. And so simply asking the teacher, how can I be sure to include everyone in the classroom, is a great direct way to let the teacher know that you want to be sure that you honor all students in the classroom, and they might have some really great ideas for that. The last question is along the same lines. What are the strengths of the students in your classroom? That just makes sure that you can play on things that the students are really good at. So if a classroom might be, a teacher might tell you, these kids are really great writers. Oh, well, perfect. Maybe you could ask them to write down some of their answers rather than speaking them and sharing them out loud. So just things like that. We want to make sure students are comfortable and that we are teaching them in the best ways possible for those students. And asking those last two questions to your educators can really help you hone in on a unique experience for your students. The last P in prep stands for personalizing and practicing. While we do provide a script and we provide activities and topics and objectives for these lessons, really what the difference JA makes in the classroom is you. being able to bring professionals from the business world into the classroom is only effective if those business professionals are sharing their own experience. So we ask you to please share stories, experiences you've had related to these topics, so that it helps students sort of personalize and understand their learning more than if just a teacher was standing there reading to them from a script. We really want them to have a personalized learning experience. That's what brings the real world connection into our lessons. You will have a copy of this slideshow, and I would encourage you to click both of these links. The stories video just are examples of stories that adults have shared in classrooms with kids. Please make sure that the examples you're sharing are age appropriate. The other link here is our JAUSA, so that's our national YouTube channel, and it gives you a lot of places where you can go to read through information on your specific lessons that you'll be teaching. So I strongly encourage you to go back and look at both of those links once you're done with this video. So to better understand the communities that we serve, there are some things you need to know about our JA Central Florida office. We have 20% of our JA alumni are characterized by having lower income in their household when they get older, or having the older, sorry, I botched that all up. The 20% of our alumni are characterized as having lower income in their classrooms or in their homes when they were younger. What that means is that when you walk into a classroom, you're dealing with most likely students who come from households that may or may not have a lot of support at home, may or may not have a lot of resources at home. And so be sure when you're sharing your examples that you are sharing examples that every student of all economic backgrounds can relate to. We want to make sure that people are understanding, that students are understanding our examples. So we want to make sure that they apply to the majority of the students in the room and not just a select few. Another thing to be aware of is that 51% of our alumni, our Hispanic alumni, reported that JA programming played an important role in their decision to further their education. So over half of our Hispanic students are really using the information they're receiving in junior achievement programming, and it's helping inform their decisions about their career paths in their futures. So you are part of a really important process, and we want to make sure that you are aware that the work that you're doing has an impact not only on students in general, but on diverse students of different types of backgrounds, which is really important in our classrooms today. So we strive to have empathy and understanding of our students in a couple different ways. The first is making sure that you are calling on all students. That's, again, the reason why I usually suggest that you ask teachers to call on students for you. We want to make sure that we're not leaving out any groups of students when we're calling on them. Another way is to be aware of the school's neighborhoods and where the students live before you go into it. If you go into Google and you look and you Google the name of the school that you're going to and then Great Schools. Great Schools is a website that has all kinds of demographics on schools all across the United States. And that will give you some background information on the students that you're teaching specifically when you go into their classrooms. You want to make sure that you're connecting your experiences to the experiences of the students as well. So when you share your experiences and your career path journey, finding ways to connect that to the students is a great way to make sure that you deepen their learning. For example, you could ask, do any of your parents or anyone that lives in your house have a job like mine, or have you heard of a job like mine before? Those kinds of things not only have students be aware of what you're doing, but it has them connect it mentally to something that they already know. And that analysis is really where we see deepened instruction. Lastly, using examples and lessons that are inclusive to a diverse population is really helpful to us and to our students. We want to make sure that the students see themselves in the stories that you're telling. That just helps them deepen their understanding, and it helps us understand our students better. So we've done these 3 steps. We have you can check this one off, the Prepare to be Awesome. You have got that guide, and hopefully you've taken some time to go through it. These last 3 steps that we reviewed are things that you can do as well on your own before you go into the classroom. So make sure that you've gone through your volunteer guide. Make sure that you are familiar with what lessons you'll be teaching and the activities for each of those lessons. Make sure that when you arrive to your campus that you are speaking with the educator and finding out the details of their classrooms and ways that you can make your presentation the most successful. And the last P for personalizing and practicing, make sure that you have selected what it is you'll be sharing ahead of time. That makes it a little bit more meaningful to students, and it makes it more intentional for you when you're planning. So our team is here for you. That's our purpose, is to make sure that when our volunteers go out into classrooms that you feel supported. If you have questions about anything, if you feel like you're missing materials, if you need more materials, please feel free to reach out to us. That's what we're here for. You are part of a very large organization system. We've served over 26,000 students last year just in Central Florida, with over 500,000 hours of programming and over 1,000 unique volunteers in schools. So you're joining a very large process that we hope we are doing well, but we always welcome feedback. If you have any feedback to help us improve our programming, or if you need information, if you have questions about something, if you're just not sure about something, please reach out to Catherine Hammond. She's our Director of Programs. Her email is on this slide. She's more than happy to help you with whatever needs you have related to your programs are. We hope you all have a fantastic time in the classroom. Have fun, get to know your students, and know that your time in the classroom is incredibly valuable to our organization, to your organization, and to our community in general. Thanks so much.